Welcome back once again to the C-Space Studio. I am James Kotecki. We are here at CES 2026 with our final guest of the C-Space Studio for this year. He's also one of our favorites, a returning guest, Luminate Intelligence's Chief Media Analyst, Andrew Wallenstein. Thanks for coming back to the C-Space Studio.
Always good to be with you.
And super fans of the C-Space Studio will note that you are at a different company this year. So what is Luminate Intelligence all about?
So Luminate is a company well known in the business of measuring media. Primarily we're known for the music business. We're the ones who power the Billboard charts, the data that goes into that.
Yeah.
But we've also, in recent years, really made some great strides into streaming, film, and television. So for instance, if you want to know how a particular show on Netflix is doing, we've got some data if Netflix isn't going to share it with you. And there's going to be all sorts of interesting expansions of what we're doing coming up.
So you're a guy with data and insights about so many of the topics that we talk about here in the C-Space Studio. So because you're a returning champion, I'm going to give you free rein with this first question. What's top of mind as you think about this year ahead, 2026?
Oh my God, it's hard to single out any one thing, but obviously if you're here at CES, all things AI, I'd be foolish to say it's not dominating every conversation. And it's very reflective of even what's going on at Luminate, where not only is it helping us do what we do, but the businesses that we serve, we're helping them as they grapple with these issues too.
And so the businesses that they serve are using AI, you're using AI, everyone's talking about AI, but what do you think it means as far as AI agents come into the picture? Because when people talk about agents, I have a sense that they mean different things when they use that term.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what the Luminate version of that is. So we have these platforms where people come on and they want our clients go onto a platform. They could search for how a show is doing and get the data back. But now, for instance, on a product called Subscription Viewership Measurement, or SVM, where people could find out about, say, how a show on Netflix or Disney Plus is doing, we have something called Lumi, an agentic AI interface that will converse with you and help you in a perhaps more seamless way, in an easier way than typical search, in a way that could anticipate what you're doing or wanting to do based on your past behaviors on the platform. So we see this as the beginning of a real sea change for our company, for our industry. Agentic AI, yes, it does mean a lot of different things, but that's what it means for us.
So it can get proactive, it can help. Does it change the scope of the kinds of people who can even access answers, right? Where maybe before you might need to be a little bit more technical. Does it let maybe different kinds of executives strategize about the future because of the way it can interface with the data?
That is the hope, because I think it's in the typical search terms, I don't think necessarily every executive is necessarily built for doing the digging that needs to be done to get the data that they want. So it helps.
Okay, so let's talk about what some of the data is telling you about the state of media in 2026. Another huge question that I'm just so casually tossing your way. But where do you think we are? Are we optimistic? Maybe we'll start with like what the audience is doing, what the audience wants.
Sure. Well, right now we're just a few weeks away from launching our annual sort of 2025 retrospective, looking at all the data trends, full year data in film and television streaming. And we're seeing some really interesting trends. I'd say this is a year where we're seeing a newfound sense of parity sneaking into the streaming space. It always used to be, here's Netflix, and then there's everyone else. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to see more streaming services putting out more hit originals, and that these hit originals are doing better, scoring higher than ever before in terms of their reception with audiences. And so there's trends like that that we think speak to, I think it's not far to connect the dots from trends like that with a move like we're seeing Netflix make now, where they could be owning Warner Brothers soon. Mm-hmm. Oh, what's a motivation for needing that firepower to have HBO and Netflix in the same way? Maybe it's because you're facing a more competitive sector than ever before.
And even beyond that, could we still expect additional consolidation and acquisitions in the years to come?
I'd be surprised if we didn't, but I feel like I've probably said that each year that I've been here, right?
Exactly.
So I'm a little scared to continue
how things are holding on,
that. But I will continue to insist that the number of entries in the streaming space simply do not make sense.
Yeah.
There has to be a consolidation.
Does your data say anything about the perception that consumers have around AI created content and the ways in which they are willing to consume that, unwilling to consume that, reject it, accept it, don't care?
We're just beginning to understand that, and we're just beginning to understand it more on the music side, where I think in the music business, I do think AI created content is very much a now trend.
Yes.
I don't know if in premium film and television, in my estimation, we're going to see the kind of breakthroughs that we're already seeing in music, where you're seeing AI-centric content, and that means a lot of different things, frankly.
Yeah.
But that kind of music is already starting to chart.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if we saw the same in film and TV anytime soon.
This actually happened to me a few weeks ago. I started listening to a song, my brother-in-law recommended it, and it turned out to be AI created. And I actually just like that song. I kind of like it unironically, and I don't like it because of the novelty of like, oh, it's cool that AI created this, but it's like, no, I just like the song. And so it seems like we're getting to a really amazing place of quality there. I mean, do you have any sense of what that means for the industry? Are people really scared about that? Are people trying to embrace it?
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot about that here at CES. I look at it in two different ways. I look at it as the industry reception and the audience reception.
Yeah.
From an industry perspective, I think it's, I don't want to say split down the middle, but largely split between people who are really embracing what AI is going to mean in terms of the production of content. And I think that's something that's going to take many years to play out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to oversimplify that. And then I think when you're talking about the audience, Illuminate, we also have the capacity to survey consumers. And this is questions that we ask them all the time. And what we've seen, and granted it's early days, that the consumers are mostly either indifferent or uncomfortable with AI-generated content. They've seen scary headlines, and maybe they're a little skittish about that. Whether that's going to be the same in a year or two, I don't know. Because like you said, you are loving a AI song unironically.
Yeah.
And I think you might be ahead of where the audience is.
I'm finally ahead of the curve. This is exciting.
Finally.
But I think one thing about that that's interesting, though, is that I can't have a relationship with the artist beyond that, right? Now, I know there are some AI artists that it's not just the song, but there's an entire persona, right? There's a visualization, an avatar of that thing. I think I saw something where an AI was actually giving a concert, like it was a giant hologram projected and real people were dancing in front of this AI hologram. But in general, I know this wasn't made by a real person, so even though it's cool, I can't have an extended relationship beyond that. So maybe that gives human artists some hope that in order to do the entire job of what an artist and a creative person does, it's still hard to outsource some of that to AI.
I would say in the long term, I wouldn't be surprised if we see perhaps an uneasy coexistence between the humans that have always been the stars. I don't think they're ever going to be displaced, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did make room for exactly the kind of avatars that on social media have been making inroads for quite some time now. I think that's only going to get more sophisticated.
What are your current thoughts on engaging Gen Z and especially Gen Alpha? Everybody's trying to figure out how to get in front of them and get them to pay attention to what they want.
Yeah, and I would not necessarily mix Z and Alpha together and paint them with one brush.
Yeah.
I think Alpha is really coming up in a very, very different world than even just Gen Z is, and are going to be open to certain things that might have been unthinkable to previous generations, that they may be loving an avatar unironically in a way that doesn't seem like a stretch for them, whereas Gen Z they will be a little more skittish. It's very easy, though, to overgeneralize with these things, especially in the early days of these trends, but at Illuminate, we're continuing to watch that.
With less than a minute to go, is there any additional topic, thought, or trends that you want to leave us here as we look at 2026 and leave the C-Space studio? Any macro trend that you want to highlight that people need to be thinking more about?
Well, I think 2026 is going to be a very interesting year for the microdrama trend. I don't know if you've been following this sort of new form of content that really seemed to have exploded in Asia, but is spreading fast on other continents as well. Which isn't to say I'm giving it necessarily the most bullish endorsement. I have a lot of skepticism about what it takes to produce this at the low cost and frankly what I see as low quality in a lot of instances, but you're going to see, I think, an extraordinary amount of experimentation, even from companies with Hollywood auspices.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to make the next year or two really, really interesting. If all goes well, we will see sort of this new sort of supercharged AI social kind of content that has a real business model attached. But I also will believe it when I see it.
Well, I can say that you never bring the micro drama here. Instead, you bring insights and intelligence, and we're always glad to have you here. Andrew Wallenstein, Luminate Intelligence. Really appreciate you being here back in the C-Space studio once again, and please come back next year and paint another picture of the future for us.
Will do.
And thank you so much for watching us here in the C-Space studio at CES 2026. We'll be back in just a second with some final words.